Today we will discuss installing Postgres SQL package on Red Hat flavor of operating systems. So I'm going to install Postgres from the RPM package from the repository, and then we will set up the Postgres and then connect to it. So in order to find out what operating system it is, you can simply do cat the Red Hat release file. If it's a Red Hat based operating system, this file will have the release information. So this is Red Hat Linux 9.5. Sorry, it is Rocky Linux 9.5 operating system. And now I'm connected to the root user. In order to install new packages, you need to have root privilege. So there is an utility called as DNF, which is a package manager in Linux. You can use DNF to manage the packages, like checking the installed packages, removing them, adding new packages, upgrading them, etc. It is like add or remove software in control panel of Windows, right? So I'm going to list all the Postgres packages using DNF. When I do this, it will list the packages matching this keyword. It will also tell whether it is installed or not installed, right? So there are no packages matching Postgres. Let me check another package called gedit. DNF lists gedit. Basically, it's a genome editor, GNOME editor. So this is already installed. You can see GNOME editor is already installed on this operating system. So the reason why the Postgres didn't match is because I didn't give the full name. Okay, now we do have Postgres SQL Server, which is available package, which means it is not installed. So let me install it. In order to install, I have to say DNF install Postgres SQL x86-64. So along with this, it also requires a dependency package. So it is going to install that as well. We are going to say yes. So it is now downloading the packages and then installing. So we have successfully downloaded and installed the packages. The next thing is, before starting the Postgres SQL Server, we need to initialize the database. So in order to read the documentation of this, Linux RPMs provide the documentation, so we can find them in user share doc and Postgres SQL. And here you have different files related to copyright information, history, missing features, known bugs, README and README RPM dist. So we're interested in README RPM dist. So let me read this file. So there are several things in this file. I know what needs to be done, but you can go through this. So under the quick start section, for a fresh installation, you will need to initialize the cluster first as a root user. Yes, we have to run this command. Postgres SQL setup and then initdb. So I am copying the string and going to a new tab and then pasting it. So this initializes the database. Okay, so user bin Postgres SQL setup, no such file or directory. Okay, let me exit the terminal and then log in as a root again. And now let me run this. Okay, because that was not in the path. So I had to re-log in for this to be in the path. Okay, this is suggesting us to install a package. Let us install the package. So that basically install the package and initialize the database. And then we have a log file. So let us see what's there in the log file. So log says that the files belongs to this database system will be owned by user Postgres. The user must also own the server process. The database cluster will be initialized, so on and so forth. And then it initializes the database, and it has kept the default databases in varlib PSQL data. And then it created subdirectories. It did some basic configuration, maximum number of connections allowed, and then shared buffers is 128 MB, setting the time zone to my time zone, etc. Right? So now, if we investigate this varlib PSQL directory, let me clear the screen, and you basically see several other directories, and among that we're in data. So you basically see a lot of other files here. We will go through the directory structure later on. What are all these different files and what they are? We'll go through that in a separate class. So now we have installed the database and we have initialized the database. Let's go back to the document and see what needs to be done. So it is suggesting us next thing is to start the service. Now we have initialized database, we have to start the server, the Postgres SQL server. The way to start the server or manage the services in Linux is by using a utility called systemctl. So the copy didn't let me go back. Let me select the string. Let me copy and paste it. Okay, so that copied some additional characters. Let me get rid of those. Okay, systemctl is a Linux utility to manage the services. So I'm doing systemctl start postgresql.service. So I started the service successfully. I can check the status of it by doing systemctl status postgresql.service, and we notice that the service is active and running, which means nothing went wrong, we're all good. So let me quit out of this. The next thing it is suggesting is to enable the service. That means we started the service now manually. When you reboot the system, the service won't be started by itself. Like that means you have not enabled the service. When you enable the service, when the system boots, next time it will automatically start the service. So we want to enable the service, systemctl. The way you do is systemctl again, enable the service. So the service is now enabled. So when you reboot the system, next time the service would have started by itself. So if you read the document further, it is telling that when you install the package, it creates the user called Postgres during the installation of the server. And then by default, it sets the UID and GID of this user to 26. So let us verify that. ID Postgres. So the UID is 26, the group ID is 26. And then it also sets the home directory to varlib pgsql. Okay, and it doesn't set any password by default. You have to create the password if you want to log in using a password. Otherwise, you can switch user to Postgres using the root user account, because as a root user, you can switch to any user account. And then this user is the database user. So you can connect to the database using this user account. So the document also talks about upgrading and a lot of other stuff. So we will do that later. So we don't want to read everything now. So I'm switching user to Postgres. I'm now user Postgres. We have a utility called PSQL. I can simply type PSQL as this user, and I should be able to get connected to the database, because this account has all the variables set up. You don't have to do anything. You just say PSQL, you will be connected to the database. Yeah, but this is a service account. We don't use this account generally. We create a user, a separate user that owns the database, the user databases, right? So this is for testing. I'm just to test that whether we are able to connect to the database, and then I can list the databases. When I list the databases, I do not see any non-default databases. We have the default database, Postgres and template 0 and template 1. So we are good. Let me disconnect from the database, and that ends this session.